The Mitsubishi Galant is an automobile manufactured by Mitsubishi Motors between 1969 and 2012. The name was derived from the French word galant, meaning chivalrous. There have been 9 distinct generations, and cumulative sales now exceed 5 million. It began as a compact sedan, but over the course of its life has evolved into a larger mid-size car. Initial production was only based in Japan, but since 1994 the American market has been served by vehicles assembled at the former Diamond Star Motors facility in Normal, Illinois. First generation. The first generation of the car, initially known as the Colt Galant, was released in December 1969 at a new Mitsubishi Japanese dealership called Galant Shop. The design was dubbed Dyno Wedge by Mitsubishi, referring to the influence of aerodynamics on the silhouette. 3 models were available, powered by the new Saturn engine in 1.3 or 1.5 L configurations. 1.4 and 1.6-litre versions replaced these in September 1971. A larger 115 PS 1.7 arrived for the top GS model in January 1973. Initially only available as a 4-door sedan, a 5-door estate and 2-door hardtop variant were added in 1970. The hardtop being Mitsubishi's first production passenger car with full side windows and no side pillars. In March 1973, with only 2 months of production left, the cleaner MCAI version of the 1.6 arrived. With 97 PS it was 3 horsepower down on the regular version. The Galant was offered as a competitor to the Toyota Corona, Nissan Bluebird and Mazda Capella. It became Mitsubishi's first car to be sold in the United States in 1971 when the Chrysler Corporation, the company's new partner and stakeholder, began importing the car as the Dodge Colt. It was also produced by Chrysler Australia and sold alongside the larger Chrysler Valiant models as the Chrysler Valiant Galant. From 1970, a fastback coupe copyright model was developed, the Galant GTO. Fashioned after contemporary American muscle cars, the hardtop GTO was available with a choice of 2 Saturn engines and the 2-litre Astron 80, and was available until 1975. The nameplate was sufficiently highly regarded in Japan for it to be resurrected for the 1990 Mitsubishi GTO Coupe copyright. A second, more compact coupe copyright was introduced on a chassis shortened by 12 cm in 1971, the Galant FTO. Powered by the Ford G41 1.4L engine, it too would leave a legacy for the company to return to in the 1990s with the Mitsubishi FTO. New Zealand. Although the earlier Colt had been imported in limited numbers, this generation, in 1.6-litre coupe copyright form only, was the first model to establish the Mitsubishi brand in New Zealand from 1971 when newly appointed distributor Todd Motors, which also imported and assembled Chrysler and Hillman, started selling a small number of Japanese-assembled cars to supplement its mainstream Hillman Avenger and Hunter models. The coupe was assembled in New Zealand from 1972, firstly at Todd's Petun factory, on the Avenger Hunter line and, from 1974, at the brand-new purpose-built factory in Perira. Second generation Mitsubishi Colt Galant 1973-76, A11 series. Introduced on May 24, 1973 in the Japanese domestic market, the second-generation Galant was more widely exported as Mitsubishi's ambitions grew. It was again sold by Chrysler in many different guises. As the Dodge Colt in the United States, as the Plymouth Colt and Plymouth Cricket in Canada, as the Chrysler Valiant Galant and as the Chrysler Galant in Australia, and in Europe as the Colt Galant. Transmissions were now all floor-mounted and include a 4-speed manual and a 5-speed unit for sportier models. A 3-speed automatic transmission was also available. The smaller 1600 engine was also available in the cleaner MCAI version right from 1973, a model which met Japan's 1975 emissions standards. This version was marginally less powerful, with 97 picoseconds rather than 100 picoseconds engine seen in the previous model. This new Galant model was more curvaceous, influenced by contemporary Coke bottle styling, and featured a range of larger Astron engines developing up to 125 picoseconds in 2000cc form to complement the Saturn units. During the second generation, the first Astron 80 engines were introduced in some markets using Mitsubishi's newly developed silent shaft balance shaft technology for reduced vibration and noise. Body styles remained the same as the first-gen Colt Galants offered in sedan, wagon and hardtop pillarless two-door coupe. New models were added to the lineup including GLE, SL5, GT and GSII. In New Zealand the hardtop, now with an 1855cc engine, was again assembled in New Zealand by Tont Motors at Perira. The sedan was not offered as Tont was planning to assemble the larger Galant Sigma sedan and wagon range from late 1977 and was still also importing the British Avenger and Hunter models. Third generation. The third generation of the car was introduced in 1976, and was known as Galant I-Pound. In many export markets the car was simply known as the Galant. At that time, the Dodge Colt in America was actually a Mitsubishi Lancer, not the Galant anymore, but nonetheless the Galant wagon variant was sold with the Dodge Colt label in the US and Canada. In Australia, where the car was made locally at Chrysler's Clovelly Park plant, it was known as the Chrysler Sigma and, after the buyout of Chrysler Australia by Mitsubishi, as the Mitsubishi Sigma. Australian content was quite high and included a locally made 2.6-litre Astron 4 which, in December 1985, replaced the 1.6, 1.85 and 2-litre engines used in other export markets. The wagon version was introduced in 1977, a little while after the sedans. A new Cooper copyright was introduced in 1976 to replace the Galant GTO. It was known in Japan as the Galant I. The coupe was sold in the United States between 1978 and 1980 as the Dodge Challenger and Plymouth Sapporo. Mitsubishi introduced the MCA jet engine for Japan and other emissions-controlled markets with its latest Galant. This incorporated the jet valve, a secondary intake valve which improved emissions without necessitating the need for a completely redesigned cylinder head. In 1978, Mitsubishi in Japan established a dedicated dealership sales channel called to sell the Galant and other selected vehicles. After late 1977 the 1850 variant was discontinued, as Mitsubishi focused their efforts on making the 1600 and the 2000 engines pass the new, stricter emissions standards. The Galant range received a facelift with single rectangular headlights in March 1978. Only 7 months later this front design was replaced with one featuring twin square headlights. Models with engines which passed the new 1978 standards changed from the A120 to the A130 range. Mitsubishi had limited resources, and the large choice of engines for the Galant lineup was reduced to one 1.6 and one 2.0. with 86 and 105 PS, at the beginning of the 1979 model year. Tont Motors initially assembled 1.6 gallons, 1.85 GLX and 2-litre GLS sedan models for New Zealand, with the GLS getting a 5-speed manual transmission as standard with 3-speed auto optional. These were the first NZ-assembled Mitsubishis to have rear-screen demisters as standard. Early cars had conventional rod-suspended headliners developed locally to meet local content rules, but these were notorious for collapsing onto the passengers' heads and were quickly replaced by newly developed, glued-in molded foam liners. The range was later revised to add the wagon and drop the 1.85-litre engine. The third-generation Galant was the recipient of the Car of the Year award in South Africa in 1977. Fourth generation, Mitsubishi's fourth iteration of the Galant I-Pound per return in I-Pound debuted many new innovations for Mitsubishi. Their new Sirius engine was offered in turbocharged form for performance enthusiasts in some markets, with 145 PS for Japanese market cars and 156 PS for those export markets unencumbered by strict emissions rules. For economy, an Astron 4D55, the first turbo-diesel engine in a Japanese passenger car, was also offered. Unusually, the fourth Galant was never offered with a naturally aspirated diesel engine. The 2.3 Turbo D was first shown at the 1980 Paris Motor Show. A new electronic fuel injection system was introduced on some versions of the gasoline Astron engine. The car was sold as the Mitsubishi Galant in most export markets, although in Australia it was known as the Mitsubishi Sigma. For the second generation in a row, Mitsubishi could claim to be building an award-winning car, as this was chosen as Car of the Year in New Zealand in 1981. The cars sold there were again locally assembled with 1.6 and 2-litre engines, and a choice of transmissions and trim. As elsewhere, the wagon versions carried over the old body style with a new nose and interior. The fourth-generation sedan and coupe copyright were both slightly larger than the third-generation cars. Additional emphasis was given to ergonomics, aerodynamics, and safety. Shoulder room, legroom, and head space were all increased, and the trunk was slightly enlarged for more luggage capacity. The interior was made quieter with additional carpeting and other acoustic dampening materials and a double-thickness front bulkhead. The wagon version was also changed, although from the firewall back the vehicle remained the same as the previous version. Production of the wagon version continued in Australia until 1987 when it was replaced by the new Magna. From 1982 to 1983, some of the Australian Sigmas, which had the carried over 2.0 or 2.6-litre locally made inline-4 engine, were exported to the United Kingdom with the Lonsdale badge, in an effort at circumventing the voluntary import quota restrictions adopted by Japanese manufacturers. However, the car was unsuccessful, and for 1983 and 1984 it carried Mitsubishi Sigma badges in the UK before imports were finally discontinued. The two-door coupe copyright was also redesigned for 1980 and was sold through 1983. While continuing with the Galant I/Eternal I label for the domestic Japanese market, the fourth generation was known as the Mitsubishi Scorpion in Australia, and the Dodge Challenger and Plymouth Sapporo in the United States. Fifth generation, a fifth-generation model shifted to front-wheel drive for 1983 as a four-door sedan and hardtop. All new chassis numbers, from E11A to E19A, marked the change. This formed the basis of the widened Mitsubishi Magna in Australia for 1985, the same year in which Mitsubishi won Baldum Sontag's Das Goldene Lenkrad Award in Germany for the Galant and Wheelser Euro unregistered trademark car of the year for the Magna. The station wagon was effectively replaced by the Mitsubishi Chariot in most markets. The Galant was the third Japanese car to adopt four-wheel anti-lock brakes, using Bosch's ABS system. Export trim levels were often engine-specific, depending on the market. GL models were offered with either 1.6-litre or 1.8-litre engines, GLS models had 2.0-litre engines and diesel versions had a 1.8-litre Sirius turbo diesel engine. The diesel model did not have a trim level, it was simply the 1800 TD. Vehicles in Japan installed with the 4-speed transmission were equipped with what Mitsubishi called Super Shift, essentially installing a transfer case, without adding an additional drive shaft to the rear wheels. Super Shift was no longer offered with the introduction of the 5-speed manual transmission. In the Japanese market there was also a parallel Eterna lineup with very minor differences in appearance and equipment. Equipment levels in Japan had more interesting names, ranging from the LS and LG via Super Saloon, Super Touring, Super Exceed, GSRX, up to the most luxurious Royal. The top models for Japan were powered by the 200 PS turbocharged and intercooled Sirius-3 halves valve engine. This engine switched between 2 and 3 valves per cylinder to combine high top-end power with low-end drivability as well being economical in operation. Sales in the United States began with the 1985 model year. This was the first time that the Galant was sold stateside since the station wagon was marketed as a Dodge Colt a few years earlier. This generation was largely replaced in 1988 by the sixth-generation Galant. The car continued to be produced in Australia however, as the TM series Mitsubishi Magna, and the hardtop range continued in production until 1990 when it was replaced by the Sigma. However, the taxi-spec sedan fitted with a 1.8-litre LPG engine, continued in production for Japanese commercial use until December 1999 when Mitsubishi abandoned the taxi market. For the last 3 years of production, this model received an LPG version of the 1834 CC4G93 engine. New Zealand, Sigma and V3000, the fifth-generation Galant was introduced to the New Zealand markets in mid-1984, as the Mitsubishi Sigma. Assembled by Mitsubishi's New Zealand distributors, Todd Motors, the Sigma was available with a choice of 1.8 and 2.0L engines, the 2.0 having the option of automatic transmission, and availability with a turbocharger on certain models. Several trim levels were offered: GL, GLX, GSR, Super Saloon and SE. The top SE versions notably featured Sigma-branded alloy wheels, digital instrumentation, climate-controlled air conditioning, cruise control, speed-dependent intermittent wipers and a salmon brown-colored interior treatment, the treatment changing deep red color as a running change in 1985 on this model. Further running changes concerned the rear styling. For the initial 1984 production run, the rear number plate was located above the bumper, however for 1985 and 1986 the plate was relocated to below the bumper, in the manner of the Japanese domestic market Galant models. New tail lights were fitted for 1987, the rear number plate reverting to its original place above the bumper. 1987 was a key year for Mitsubishi in New Zealand, being that Mitsubishi Motors bought out Todd Motors' automotive operations. Although the sixth-generation Galant was introduced for 1988, the older fifth-generation body shell stayed in production alongside it. Mitsubishi Motors New Zealand intentionally decided to retain the fifth-generation sedan body style for a new, unique to New Zealand, flagship model, the 3.0 V6 engine V3000. The V3000 was developed specifically to give Mitsubishi New Zealand a six-cylinder family car, suitable for towing boats and caravans, to compete with the Ford Falcon EA and Holden Commodore VN models. In practice, the combination of mid-sized car with larger engine proved popular with New Zealand's traffic patrol departments. While the rear styling of the previous Sigma model was retained, the frontal treatment was changed, a more formal metallic upright grille replacing the previous Sigma grille. For 1990 an update was made to the V3000, being the fitment of the Eterna hardtop's frontal treatment, New Zealand being the only market where this treatment was given to the fifth-generation four-door sedan body shell. Assembly of this model continued until 1992, when it was replaced by the second-generation Australian Mitsubishi Magna Trail V6 range, which for the New Zealand market continued the use of the Mitsubishi V3000 name. Sapporo Sigma. The hardtop sedan bodywork was used in export markets as well, where it received a six-window design unlike for its Japanese market counterparts. It was marketed under different names. Galant I-Pound, or Eterna I-Pound in Japan, Sapporo in Europe, and plain Sigma in the US. US sales began in August 1988 and continued until 1990. These cars were available with a 3-liter V6 or 2.4-liter four-cylinder engines in the export. In the domestic Japanese market the hardtops received 2-liter 4s, or the smaller 2-liter V6 6G71 engine from 1986, shared with the Mitsubishi Debonair limousine. The luxurious hardtop range continued to be available until 1990 as Mitsubishi's most luxurious offering in most export markets, until the Sigma Diamante replaced it. It also continued on sale in Japan, but only as the Eterna Sigma after a facelift in May 1989. In Japan the hardtop was available with a 1.8-liter 4 at the bottom of the range and with the large 3-liter V6 in the top Duke version after this makeover. The European market Sapporo took its bow at the 1987 Frankfurt Motor Show. The large 2.4-liter Ford G64 Series four-cylinder producing 129 PS at 5,000 rpm. Sixth generation, in 1987 the same platform was used for a sixth-generation model which adopted taller, rounded styling. This generation won the Car of the Year Japan Award in 1987 and the GS model became Motor Trend's Import Car of the Year in 1989. This Galant began American sales in 1989 side by side with the Sigma. The Galant range underwent a minor facelift in 1991. with new grilles and other modifications. Also in 1991, Mitsubishi Motors Company completed a new assembly facility at Barcelona, Venezuela, with the Galant being one of the first models produced. It was sold there until 1994 under the ZX, MF, MIS and MX names, which identified the various levels of equipment and transmission. The Sigma designation disappeared with the 1990 model. A new hardtop liftback model was added in 1988, called the and in Japan, the Eterna was only sold at a specific retail chain called Car Plaza. This generation Galant was also sold in Canada as the Dodge 2000 GTX and Eagle 2000 GTX. The 5-door liftback version was never offered in North America, where buyers prefer traditional sedans. Sales ended in 1993. A limited edition based on the T16V model was introduced in 1989, modified by German tuning company AMG, with mildly uprated engine and unique body kit, alloy wheels, and full leather interior. The AMG appearance treatment was also achieved on the Debonair for 1986. The sixth generation was also the first to see the introduction of the VR4 variant, which was the basis for Mitsubishi's participation in the 1988 Euro 1992 World Rally Championships. The Galant's 4G63 2-litre DOHC turbocharged engine and 4WD transmission was later adopted for the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution with little modification, and would remain in production for 15 years. Starting in 1987, the Mitsubishi Galant V-Series were produced for the Japanese market as a sporty alternative to the regular Galant range. The lineup consisted of Viento and VXS VZS models featuring the higher output 1.8 and 2.0 turbo DOHC engines with both automatic and manual transmissions available. The V-Series featured the VR4 interior, exterior design and updated bumpers, clear indicator lens covers, optional two-tone body paint, as well as standard air conditioning, full electrics, rear windscreen wiper, spoiler and alloy wheels. The series was discontinued in 1992. Safety: National Highway Traffic Safety Administration crash test ratings for 1991 Euro 1993 Galant, frontal driver, frontal passenger, side driver, not rated, side rear passenger, not rated, rollover, not rated. 7th generation, a new Galant debuted in 1992, available as a 4-door sedan and 5-door liftback. A Japan-only hardtop derivative called the was also launched in 1992. The width dimensions of the model sold in Japan no longer complied with Japanese government dimension regulations, and buyers were now liable for additional taxes, which affected sales. This generation marked a substantial change in suspension design. The front switched from struts to a multi-link structure featuring 2 lower arms and 1 upper arm. The rear switched from a beam axle to a newly designed multi-link system. Both designs would carry over to the second-generation Mitsubishi Eclipse and its sister vehicles. Because the Lancer Evolution was now Mitsubishi's homologated rally car, the 7th-generation VR4 became a less overtly sporting vehicle, eschewing the old 4-cylinder engine in favor of a smoother 2-litre V6 twin-turbo. The 4-wheel drive transmission was retained. Production in the United States began on May 24, 1993 when the first 7th-generation Galant rolled off the assembly line in Normal, Illinois. In 1994, a slightly upgraded GS version was available with a 160 HP twin-cam engine, speed-sensitive steering, rear stabilizer bar, and an available manual transmission. In Europe were also available 167 HP naturally aspirated 2.5 L 24-valve DOHC engine, which was mounted with 4-wheel drive, 5-speed manual transmission and 4-wheel steering. Body styles were 4-door sedan and 5-door hatchback. Rear differential was not available with limited slip. In option were sunroof, AC, cruise control, power windows, central locking, electrical heated seats and electrical side mirrors. Safety: National Highway Traffic Safety Administration crash test ratings for 1997 and 1998 Galant, frontal driver, frontal passenger, side driver, side rear passenger, rollover, not rated. 8th generation. The 8th generation 1996 model continued the 1992 design themes, but a 5-door station wagon was added while the 5-door liftback was dropped in favor of 5-door station wagon body style. This model won the 1996 Euro 97 Car of the Year Japan Award for the second time. Despite being superseded in the US from 2003, it remained on sale in other countries until 2006. In Japan, the Legnum was sold only at a specific retail chain called Car Plaza, while the Galant remained exclusive to Galant shop locations. This model was also produced in Barcelona, Venezuela, at the only Mitsubishi plant in Latin America. At the beginning, the Galant was marketed in that country under the MX and MF names in 1997 and 1998, then kept the Galant name until the end of its production in 2006. Although the equipment options were limited, the VR4 appearance package was offered in that market. The American market Galant, introduced on July 7, 1998, graduated to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's mid-sized class. The front suspension switched from double wishbones to struts, though the rear was upgraded with a stabilizer bar standard on all but the base DE model. ES, LS and GTZ models were offered with a 195 HP V6 engine, the 6G72 3.0L, mated to a standard 4-speed conventional auto. Another difference from Asian and European models was lack of ABS, which was only installed on 3.0L model. Mitsubishi opted to further develop the technology in its range-topping VR4, which was now powered by an enlarged 2.5L V6 twin-turbo. The car featured either a conventional 5-speed manual or INVEX II transmission. Some models were also fitted with the same advanced active yaw control as the Lancer Evolution, to give it greater agility than would be expected of such a large vehicle. Finally, as with the rest of the range, the VR4 could now be had either as a Galant sedan or as a Legnum station wagon. In some Asian markets Mitsubishi offered a 2.0L MIVEC version of the 6A12, a high-revving naturally aspirated V6 race engine with a sports ECU engine management module, badged as the Galant 2.0A, or alternately as the VRM. This engine was also found on Mitsubishi's mid-size sports car FTO GPX. Output was placed at 200 HP and 147 lb-ft of torque. The larger 2.5L 6A13 was more common in the rest of the world. In 1998 the company introduced the Mitsubishi Aspire. Externally identical to the regular Galant, the new model name denoted the newly introduced gasoline direct injection engines. Safety. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration crash test ratings for 2001 Galant with outside airbags, frontal driver, frontal passenger, side driver, side rear passenger, rollover, not rated. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration crash test ratings for 1999 a Euro 2002 Galant with side airbags, frontal driver, frontal passenger, side driver, side rear passenger, rollover, not rated. 9th generation, North America, CIS and Middle East. The United States has had the sedan-only 9th generation PS platform model since October 15, 2003. It was announced at the 2003 New York International Auto Show in April for the 2004 model year, following the exhibition of the SSS concept sedan at the North American International Auto Show 3 years before. The 9th generation United States-sourced model is available for sale only in a few regional markets, namely the United States, Puerto Rico, Russia, Ukraine and Arabia. Russia began sourcing its Galants from the United States from 2006. The Arabian markets began sourcing their Galants from the United States from the 2007 model year. The Galant had also been available in Canada and Mexico until the 2010 and 2009 model years, respectively. A size increase resulted in slightly more interior space and a weight gain of several hundred pounds. The four-cylinder engine, while still 2.4 litres in displacement, upgraded from Mitsubishi's Ford G64 design to the newer Ford G69 design, resulting in a horsepower increase from 140 to 160. Likewise, the V6 jumped from a 3.0-litre with 190 HP to a 3.8 with 235. All North American Galants gained all-wheel disc brakes but lost their rear stabilizer bar. A Rally Art version joined for 2007, finally upgrading the V6 to a class-competitive 258 HP while also adding a firmer suspension, front strut tower bar, rear stabilizer bar, and 18-inch alloy wheels. For 2008, the trimming of models left the Rally Art as the only V6 model, and the Galant skips the 2008 model year in Canada, only to return in 2009 with a facelifted model. Four-cylinder Galant models sold in California, Maine, Massachusetts, New York and Vermont are certified as partial zero-emissions vehicles, with the engine rated 155 HP. This iteration of the Mitsubishi Galant only went on sale in the Middle East region for the 2007 model year, with a 2.4-litre engine and a 3.8-litre engine, imported from the United States. Osamu Masuko, the CEO of Mitsubishi Motors, indicated that the ninth generation of the Galant would be the last to be manufactured in North America, to be replaced on the MMNA production line in Illinois by smaller vehicles which are more likely to appeal to export markets. The final Mitsubishi Galant rolled off the assembly line on August 30, 2012. In Japan only, the market position held by the Galant, which was discontinued in Japan June 15, 2005, was replaced by the Nissan-sourced Mitsubishi Proudia, which is a rebadged Nissan Fuga. Facelifts. 2006 The Galant received some cosmetic changes, such as an AC adapter, and a standard MP3 jack, and upgrades to the interior. 2007 In 2007, the Galant was restyled. This included an interior upgrade, with a navigation, audio system, and updates to the interior. 2009 In 2009, the Galant was restyled again. A four-cylinder Sport Edition was added for the 2009 model year. Galant Sport models include new standard factory value packages as standard. Sportronic automatic transmission is standard in all models, with a 4-speed for four-cylinder engines and a 5-speed for V6 engines. East Asia. Mitsubishi also assembles and markets a Taiwan-made version of the 9th generation Galant. In Taiwan, this version is known as the Mitsubishi Grinder. Taiwan was one of the first regions outside the Americas to market the 9th generation vehicle, when the Galant Grinder was launched in December 2004 with a unique front end. It has a 162 PS version of the 2.4-litre MIVEC engine and 4-speed automatic, and comes in either seri format or as the better-equipped XI model. This facelifted model is also sold in the Philippines as the Galant 240M, and in the People's Republic of China as the Galant, by Suost Motor. Australia. From 2005 to 2008, a localised version called the Mitsubishi 380 was manufactured in Australia for the Australian and New Zealand markets. No four-cylinder was offered in the Australian market using the 3.86 G75 V6 with 175 kilowatt. This replaced the long-lived Magna line. Footnotes. External links: Mitsubishi Galant at MMC's official global site, Mitsubishi Galant at MMNA's official US site, Technical Guide Mitsubishi Galant 2004 to 2009.